By the year 11 CE, Emperor Trajan had expanded Roman borders to their absolute limit. The empire stretched from the damp coasts of the Atlantic Ocean all the way across Europe and the Middle East to the shores of the Caspian Sea. In the ancient world, controlling a territory that massive usually came with a quick death sentence. Wide borders meant agonizingly slow communication, making it nearly impossible to supply distant armies or suppress local rebellions before they spiraled into total collapse. Rome's trajectory began in 753 BC as a cluster of farmers and shepherds living on the Palatine Hill. Expanding from those small hilltop huts to a massive, continent-spanning superpower required a mechanism that could sustain itself. The Romans engineered a three-part system: a highly specialized military, a deeply integrated administrative web, and a strategy to absorb enemies. Instead of a traditional kingdom relying on the whims of a single monarch, the empire operated like a finely tuned machine. Every new territory they conquered provided the raw materials and manpower to drive the next expansion. The first component of this machine was a permanent, professional standing army. Under Emperor Augustus, the military was restructured into an active, leaner force of 28 permanent legions. On the battlefield, they threw out the rigid phalanx formations favored by the Greeks. They reorganized their troops into smaller, highly maneuverable blocks called cohorts, allowing individual units to pivot and adapt to changing terrain on the fly. But fighting was only a fraction of their job description. A Roman legion functioned as a highly trained, mobile construction crew, packed with specialized engineers, craftsmen, and manual laborers. Every single night while on campaign, these crews built heavily fortified camps to eliminate the risk of ambush. By day, they constructed complex siege engines and laid down the very stone roads they marched on. This dual-purpose structure transformed the army from a seasonal militia that went home for the harvest into a permanent vanguard. They could push deep into hostile territory, secure their supply lines, and stay there indefinitely. Maintaining tens of thousands of professional soldiers year-round requires massive amounts of food and money. To keep the military moving, Rome built a regulated economic and logistical administration. The physical evidence of this administration sits in the center of Rome today, at an archaeological site called Monte Testaccio. This artificial mountain consists of 25 million shattered olive oil amphoras, the remnants of a highly organized trans-Mediterranean tax and trade network known as the Annona. To track these resources and prevent fraud, state magistrates and tax officials maintained rigorous written records. They physically stamped these clay vessels with wax seals and inscriptions detailing the exact contents, the origin, and the merchant responsible. This economic output was built on a brutal foundation. The wealth generation of the Roman state relied heavily on ruthless extraction from conquered provinces and the forced labor of millions of enslaved people. Through this administrative web, Rome ensured wealth extracted from the provinces was converted into state revenue, ready to be funneled directly back into the military. Conquering territory and extracting wealth creates enemies. To maintain stability, Rome deployed its final strategy. They systematically recruited the very people they defeated. Whenever they took over a region, the Romans embedded their culture through monumental architecture like amphitheaters and public baths. These structures offered a high standard of living and served as cultural focal points, making conquered populations actively want to participate in Roman society. To prevent ideological rebellions, they practiced religious syncretism, deliberately adopting local gods into their own pantheon. They also integrated foreign elites directly into the Roman aristocracy, giving them a stake in the empire's success. The most powerful incentive was citizenship. By offering partial or full legal protections and social prestige to foreign subjects, especially those who served as auxiliary soldiers, Rome purchased fierce loyalty. This assimilation policy closed the loop of the entire system. Former enemies were transformed into loyal, tax-paying citizens, providing a pool of military recruits to launch the next campaign. At its peak, this cycle was self-sustaining. Conquest brought wealth. That wealth built logistical infrastructure, and cultural integration provided new Romans to keep the gears turning. Centuries later, the gears stopped moving. Corrupt emperors overspent the treasury, neglected the infrastructure, and failed to maintain the systems that had kept the empire stable. The most devastating breakdown happened within the assimilation protocol. When Gothic refugees fled the Huns and crossed into Roman territory, corrupt local officials chose to exploit them rather than integrate them. The result was a massive, uncontrolled guerrilla war inside Rome's own borders. To fight these internal wars with a depleted treasury, Rome stopped raising citizen armies and started hiring foreign mercenaries. These hired troops had no loyalty to the state, and in 476 AD, a mercenary king deposed the last Western emperor. Rome fell when it abandoned the mechanics that built it. True power in the ancient world required the creation of adaptable, interlocking systems. And while the Western Empire eventually collapsed, its blueprint for law, infrastructure, and administration permanently shaped the modern world.